It gives me great pleasure to welcome Tim Hudak, CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Board Association, and Dana Pearce, President-elect for the Rideau St. Lawrence Real Estate Board. Minister Clark, as he mentioned, will be joining a little after the presentations are done. Again, you will find their bios in investleads-grenville.com/summit2021. So I don't take time. We have precious time on air, so everyone can read those. Dana, Tim, welcome. I'm so glad you're both able to join us. Tim, I know you have a presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks, Tim.
You bet. No, and for sure. Thank you. And on the name relax, I've been called a lot worse. Trust me, over the years. I'm really excited to be joined here today by Dana Pearce as well. Many of you know Dana. She's a strong reputation as a broker owner out of Brockville, and importantly, she's taking a leading role in real estate as a president-elect for the Rideau St. Lawrence board. So Dana is going to talk the local scene when it comes to housing, and I'm going to give the province-wide picture. And I want to say to Anne and Deanna Clark as well, I was really excited when you reached out to me. Deeply appreciate how you are committed to housing, affordability of home ownership, and the importance that plays in the local economy. Plus, I love being a Leeds-Grenville when I had the chance with my old hat on. In fact, I liked it so much I named my youngest Maitland after that lovely town just east of Brockville. I'll leave that hanging, whether that's actually true or not, but a beautiful part of the province, and look forward to coming back in person. And I know on the streets of whether it's Gananoque or Brockville or Kemptville, probably like where I come from in Niagara, that you always thought when you grew up, you played by the rules, you got a good job, you got your education, you could afford a home in the neighborhood that you grew up in. If you want to live in your same town, you can find a nice place to live in the middle-class neighborhood. But that's increasingly becoming out of reach for families where they live in small towns, mid-sized cities, or the big city. And why is that happening? Well, Dana and I will talk about that today. The good news is it's a large part, a lot of demand. That's a good thing, right? People want to buy a home. It's a smart investment for the long run. And after all, you can't raise a family inside a stock or a bond. So it's a place of our most precious memories where we can be ourselves and decide during the COVID crisis, safe and secure. Housing also is driving up in demand because now have the millennials, who are the largest generation in Canadian history, getting into the housing market, growing up, getting promoted, having families. We have low mortgage rates, at least for the time being. And then there's the bank of mom and dad, to be honest about it. The boomer generation is the generation in Canada's history with the greatest amount of wealth saved up. And they desperately loved their sons and daughters, but they wouldn't mind if they got their own place and moved out of the basement. So a lot of this is driving demand in our economy. And under Minister Clark, before government, was seeing a strong economy in the province as well, improving as well post-COVID. So all that drives up demand. The issue, we don't have enough homes for people that they can afford in the marketplace. It has become like an increasingly cruel game of musical chairs, with more people going around and fewer chairs to find a place to sit. Solution, more supply, more choice, more affordability. Okay, so let's get on with the presentation. So why is homeownership important? Well, homeownership has been a cornerstone of a prosperous Ontario. It builds stronger communities, large and small, supports families, generates enormous economic activity. A home sale will have spin-offs about $90,000 in the local economy from any kind of renovations that you make, new furniture, new appliances, services that are delivered. There's no better way to kickstart an economic engine than with housing sales. And think about that when you got your first home. Remember when Deb and I bought our first home, 2002, in township of West Lincoln, the heart of Niagara. Changed me as a man too. I cared more about investing in my home. I cared more about my neighbors. I volunteered, got involved in the community. Study after study will demonstrate that families that own homes tend to be healthier. Their kids do better in school. They get better jobs. They're more active volunteers. A huge success in Canada has been a stable middle class that's able to buy a home and contribute back to neighborhoods and communities. It's been a great story of our country. Challenges, you'll see in the next slide, prices are going through the roof. And I know you're seeing this in the United Counties as well. So over time, look at how housing prices, and this is the average home, and Dana can talk about what's happening in the United Counties. We had a bit of a dip during the worst, darkest part of COVID in March through June of 2020, but then it has spiked back up again. I told you earlier what's driving housing demand around the millennials, low mortgage rates, a growing economy, faith in our province. During COVID, there were a couple more changes. People said, you know what? My experience has been I'd like a larger home, maybe have an office, or maybe grandma moves in with us. And also work from home has given people an opportunity to explore housing choices outside of the core urban areas. And that's also putting pressure on the housing prices in places like Leeds-Grenville. So there you see the spike. I told you earlier that the big issue is supply. So the second biggest issue is supply, and the third biggest issue is supply. So this is a chart that realtors use that shows, housing inventory in the marketplace based on the number of months it would take to sell it all off. So if no new homes were listed, everybody stayed put, how long does it take to sell the existing housing stock that's on the marketplace? And this is a historic low we're in today. Usually realtors like a balanced market because you got time, work with clients, it's not as frenzied. But look what we see today where we have a record low amount of inventory in the marketplace. So basically, if no more homes came on the market, every house in Ontario would sell out in under a month. We have never seen that in the history of our province. The other challenge is that incomes are not keeping pace. So you see here on this chart that housing prices are the blue line, and that's how much they have increased in the last number of years. Big increase in 2020 for the reasons I described. And while incomes are picking up again as we move out of the shadow of COVID, we are still dramatically behind. So no wonder people who played by the rules, got a job, everything the parents told them to do, are getting frustrated because despite all they've done, they're still slipping further and further behind when it comes to housing prices. So let me tell you what's happening in your area. And Dana will tell you more on the ground. Across Ontario, so who's moving in? I always think this is interesting. So we work with TerraNet. TerraNet is a land registry, as you know. And the next slide will talk about Leeds-Grenville mover activity. So TerraNet's our partner on this. And they basically look at where people were and where they moved to for the principal residence, not cottages, not secondary homes, the principal residence. So most of the folks in the United Counties that move into your neighborhoods, your towns, are actually from the area. So 40% of mover activity in the last couple of years has been within Leeds-Grenville. That's pretty normal for everywhere in the province. People usually stay closer to home, family, relatives, and jobs. You have a significant number of people that have moved in from the Ottawa, Carleton area. Dana can talk more about that. I suspect that's usually been the case, but you saw a 75% increase in that number in 2021. So remember the factor I told you about people working from home, a greater opportunity to live in a smaller community, a bit more distance. I do believe fundamentally in the small town comeback. So you're seeing that with a significant increase in folks from the Ottawa area moving in. Next biggest one is GTA. So that's relatively small. It was 5.5% of people moving in to Leeds-Grenville in 2020, but it did jump to 7.1. So that's a pretty good increase as well, as the secret is out that Leeds-Grenville is an awesome place to live. And that means more people coming in from your west as well as your east. Durham was most of that activity, representing a massive jump. Well, it's 30 transactions a year, but 216% increase in Durham folks that have moved in to the area as coming out of the GTA. And then the other segment is first-time home buyers. So 13% of people that bought homes in Leeds-Grenville were first-time buyers. Nothing makes a realtor happier than when she hands over the keys to a family getting a home for the first time. They all remember those stories. That's a big increase. So that's a positive sign, right? Yeah, we talk about housing costs and affordability challenges, but there are some positive signs on the way. We need more of them. But you did see a 20% increase in first-time home buyers coming into your area. Maybe a number were from outside the United Counties, but I take that as a good sign. Okay, so that's where people are coming from that are moving into your area. Dana will have more details. But here's what I worry about. And I know your MPP, Steve Clark, as our Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, thinks about this every night. And I expect Michael Barrett does as your MP as well. But look at home ownership in our province on this slide. So a great story of Canada from Confederation, John A. Macdonald, through the Depression, through the wars, through the 1970s and 80s, every year, a family had a better shot at owning a home than the parents and grandparents. It was true in my family, I suspect in yours as well. Great part of what we've seen in Canada never faltered until 2012. We started heading downhill. And if we don't change our course, we are going to plummet to, we calculate, about 60% of adults being homeowners. We should be, for a healthy economy and a strong middle class, above 70%. So how do we actually get back on track and reverse this decline? I hope you believe, like I do, homeownership is a fundamental driver of safety, security, a smart investment, and helps build strong communities. We need to turn that around. We start with boosting housing supply. So a lot of what I do as the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, representing Ontario's 80,000 plus realtors, is advocating for homeownership, creating the next generation of Ontario homeowners. And it really comes to working with our partners in provincial, municipal, and federal government on creating more supply in the marketplace. So how are we doing? Well, we just got through a federal election, and congratulations to MP Barrett in taking that seat in Parliament. The Conservative Party, as well as the others, all had ideas they put on the table. If the election back a number of years ago was about jobs, 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 you can see in this slide, this one actually was about housing. And that's pretty rare for a federal election, because most of the housing decisions are made at the provincial and local level. Okay, so quickly, what did that mean? Well, the federal Liberals are the leading party right now in terms of seats in Parliament. They'll look for a dance partner in minority government, but they made a number of promises on the housing front. Many were ideas that we put on the table, so we're happy to see a commitment to more homes across Canada. We have suggested moving excess commercial space, work from home. We see commercial sector shrinking, so can you convert some of those commercial buildings into mixed residential, commercial, or residential? A home credit for, they call it multi-generational, so grandma can move home with families, you can fix up the house. We did see that also in a provincial budget recently, that kind of tax credit we like. A housing accelerator fund will help municipalities hire more planners and move projects forward, and some helpful, not huge, but helpful tax credits for first-time home buyers. Then the next page, one thing we're really pushing against is to stop the flow of dirty money into the province of Ontario. Overseas drug lords and criminals, corrupt officials from corrupt countries see Canada's real estate as a place to squirrel away their money. It is a safe haven, but I'm sure you're like us on the Real Estate Association. We don't want to see a single property that should go to a law-abiding Canadian citizen go into the hands of a niece or nephew of a drug lord. So we're happy to see this at a national level. We hope to see it at the provincial level as well, weeding out that dirty laundry of illegal money coming into our country into real estate. And the next page I'll talk about, there are some areas of concern we saw. The federal government's talking about mandatory auctions for your home. The traditional process, you work with somebody like Dana or one of her agents. There are offers coming, you decide which offer you like is the best. The government nationally is saying they want to move everything to an auction process. We are worried about that because we think auctions will drive prices even higher. Auction fever develops. In Australia and New Zealand, by the way, they use auctions by choice. They're using them more and more often because buyers think, well, I'm going to get more for my house when people get a little carried away in an auction. We think people should have a choice in how they sell their home. We're very worried about new taxes coming into housing. As you know, housing is the greatest source of middle-class savings, and an attack on that will be a betrayal of the promise for Canadians that they don't have to pay tax when they sell their principal residence and depend upon that for the retirement. So we are on guard about that. We don't like the smoke signals we see coming in that direction that would suggest they're looking at a tax on the equity in your home. All right, so there's quickly in the federal government. So if you thought that was an issue in the federal campaign, it will be a major issue in the provincial election, which will be in June of 2022. And I suspect it'll be a question for Warden Haley and those running for county office as well in the fall of 2022. We see across the board that home buyers are concerned about affordability, and there is a significant risk that Ontarians will simply pick up and move to another province based on affordability alone. We found 46% of prospective home buyers 45 and under are doing searches right now, not in our province, but in Halifax, in Moncton, in Manitoba, and Alberta. Okay, so those are the challenges, some ray of sunlight. Next page, we have in the province of Ontario the most pro-housing government we have seen in a generation. Since taking office with Minister Clark as Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, We have seen positive things to incentivize more development, more affordable homes. We've seen a nice increase in housing starts and the biggest increase in rentals since I believe 1992. There's a seniors program to help seniors renovate their home to stay in their homes longer. It was an idea that OREA suggested. We're happy to see. Reducing red tape and streamlining the approval process. It's crazy that it takes 10 to 12 years to get housing development approved in our province. That's nuts. Imagine how expensive that's going to be. So we're happy with the steps to move those forward, get them done faster. The More Homes, More Choice Act, which took in 8 of 10 of our ideas. So that's a pretty good grade. We'll take an A on that one. Was the most pro homeownership legislation that this province has seen in generations. It is paying off. And as you may have seen in the recent fall economic update, there's a commitment to a housing affordability task force to take us the next steps, and also a brownfields financial tax incentive program. I think that'll be very popular and helpful in Eastern Ontario as well, converting some old sites into affordable homes and new businesses. So we're off to a very good start here in the province of Ontario. More work to be done, but a lot of boxes checked off that mean good things for the future. Next round, how do we bring affordability home to your towns, to my area, Niagara, and across the province as a whole? Okay, so here's what's happening when it comes to number of housing starts in our province. We're doing pretty well in 2000, 2004. And then we started going sideways with a lot more red tape. We got out of balance. We're slowing things down too much while the population was growing, while immigration was coming into our country. Low point 10 to 14. But look what we're seeing now, 15 to 19, started heading up. And what I'm calling the Steve Clark effect, I hope you're very proud of your MPP and the minister. Since he took office in 2018, we are finally heading in the right direction. More homes coming to market, projected to have close to 100,000 new homes in our province for 2021. That would be a record. Let's keep that up. Our calculation tells us to catch up with the lack of supply over the past couple of decades, we need 100,000 homes per year. Good news is we're on the way, and thank you, Minister Clark, for what you've done to get housing going in the province again and bringing hope to families who want to have a place to call home. What do we put on the table? And I hand over to Dana right after this. Well, as I said, more homes constructed than the past 2 decades, more to come. More Homes, More Choice Act was the tinder that got that going. We're still a little bit short of the 100,000 homes per year. So how do we get it to that next level? Well, some suggestions we have: lower cost of first-time home buyers. There is a tax credit, land transfer tax rebate for first-time buyers. We'd like to see that double. That would likely mean for the vast majority of homes in Leeds-Grenville that you would not pay land transfer tax on your first home. Cut red tape, modernize zoning rules, lower costs in development. All of this will bring more affordable homes to the market sooner. There's opportunity for new models for home ownership that will help people with the down payment. As many of you know, it's not really the mortgage payments that slow people down now. It's having the cash at hand for the down payment. So using pension money, for example, patient investors that would help people get the home, and then they get paid off on their investment down the road when the home is sold, or on a per month basis, kind of like a modern rent to own program. I've already talked about getting the dirty money out of real estate so law-abiding Canadians can get into the market, and homes are taxed enough as it is. We don't need another tax on home. Next slide, some other ideas, and I know Minister Clark thinking about these, and we'll see what his panel comes up with. There's going to be surplus government land, and to Michael Barrett's credit, this is part of the Conservative platform nationally as well. So instead of leaving empty government buildings or underutilized real estate, why not convert that to affordable homes? They did it in New York City, and if you can get 200,000 plus homes in Manhattan, for goodness sakes, we've got a lot of room to do so in the province of Ontario. Convert excess commercial properties that will be empty as a result of work from home to housing. A home renovation tax credit will help people get the keys to their home. And also where communities that are on significant transit lines, building around transit hubs can go a long way. And when it comes to smaller communities, including the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, the top things we think will help with housing affordability and quality of life: broadband installation. We're pleased to see over $1 billion in the most recent provincial budget to expand broadband. That's natural, modern infrastructure. Natural gas expansion as well will spur growth opportunity, lower costs for homeowners. Opportunity zones, I can talk more about that, but it usually goes hand in hand with converting brownfields to housing and a rent to own program. That is a long list. If you want to check that out, Go to bringaffordabilityhome.com. You can read more detail. Also, go to that website, by the way, you can click and send a message directly to your MPP if you like. By your postal code, we know who that is. So, you know, you want to send a few messages to Steve Clark to keep on the right track. I'm sure that'd be appreciated as well. So again, Ann, really thrilled to be here. And Deanna, thanks for reaching out. I'll pause at this point and let's get the local angle from Dana Pearce, our president-elect of the Rideau St. Lawrence Real Estate Board. Dana?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Tim, for joining us and asking me to come along as well. Kind of hard to follow Tim after that, but I will do my best. So I am the broker of record at Sutton Essential in Brockville. I'm also the president-elect, like he said, for the Rideau St. Lawrence Board. Bringing into it a local standpoint, I'm asked constantly how I feel about the market. You must be so happy that prices are going up because it means you make more money. That kind of stuff is said to me a lot. And in actuality, it's much more stressful than anybody can imagine, because I also work with buyers who are very upset right now based on they look at however many houses they look at and there's nothing for them to buy because they lose offer after offer. So like Tim said, it's supply and demand. Everywhere you look in different areas, it's no different in real estate. So just as I don't have slides to go with it, but just from a thinking standpoint, in October of 2019 in Brockville, the average sale price of a house was $273,719, which was normal. We all felt it was normal. We all just kind of coasted. 2020 of October, it went all the way up to 370. And then this year, just a month ago, the average sale price in Brockville hit just over $500,000. So that's a huge jump. And that is brought on by there not being enough houses on the market. It's simple. You have so many people trying to buy a house and not enough houses to look at. So when I go to a house, I ask people if they have a plan of where they're going to go, because you can't just sell your house and be homeless. So those people want to capitalize on the way the market is right now. They're going to make more on their house, but they don't have anywhere to go based on there's not a lot of houses for rent, or they don't have family to live with, or they can't simply buy another house because there are 10 other offers on the house and they can't win. So they start taking risks on putting no conditions in offers and different things like that, which I don't think is the smartest idea, but that's what people do in order to win. So then you think of ways of how are you going to make the supply larger, because we're used to older people in the housing area. They move on to a nursing home, or they move to downsize, or they move to an in-law suite, or different things like that, which would have created the supply on the in the hop, really. But from my own standpoint, I just like to bring in stories from my own life. My grandfather is 87 years old, and he's been on a list for over 2 years on getting into affordable housing so that he could sell his home to downsize further. He has no mortgage. He has just the cost of maintaining a house. He finally got a call that he could look at a property, but it's $1,800 a month to live there. So him selling his house to then turn around and pay that much to live just on the cost of the property doesn't really make sense, because I can hire somebody to cut his lawn and shovel his driveway for way less than that. And then he would be lonely, I feel like, by going to an apartment size thing. So you have that kind of stuff that is stressing the market as well. So then we look at different areas of, can more middle-aged people be ready to sell their homes, so that that can add into the market here. But speaking to, if we were looking at building a house right now, I spoke to Matthew Eyre from Nostalgic Homes. He's a local builder. He just built a new house just this fall, and it cost $400 a square foot to build the house on average. That is opposed to $300 a square foot 2 years ago to build that same house. So those people that wanted to build a house now need to make more money on the house that they're in to sell it to go to the next house. So that doesn't add any hope for people getting into the market right now, in my opinion anyway, that the house price goes up. So the supply also, just to point out another tidbit, in October 2019, there were 244 houses on the market in Brockville. So that kind of goes along with the demand that was there at the time. And in October 2021, so a month ago, there were 105. So that's a big drastic drop in the supply. So demand is up, supply is down. That obviously goes into the price point of how much a house costs. Also, to bring in just another story of demand ideas right now. Last week I had a house for sale in Johnstown, listed at $399. I had 29 showings on it. The day comes for offers and there are 10 offers on that and it sells for $525,000. The buyer came from Oshawa. There were local people as well that put offers in. But him coming from Oshawa also is looking at me going, well, the price of houses here, like this is remarkable. I can't buy this house in Oshawa for this price. So that's the other issue that we're dealing with is the people coming from larger cities are used to paying a certain amount of money. So they come to Brockville, an area, Johnstown, wherever, and they see these houses and they think, well, this is great. And they pay the price that they would have paid in a bigger city to beat the people that are in this area. And the people in this area are so used to seeing certain prices that they're not willing to pay those bigger prices and they get beat out. And no seller is going to say, oh, I'll take the lower amount just to help the local person. So you have that going against the supply and demand right now. The other part that I was thinking about is if an investor is buying houses right now, they're paying more money, the same as anybody else, in order to win the offer. But they're also not going to turn around and rent that property out at a lower amount. So if we can figure out a way to have there be lower costs for rent, we might see people sell their house because now there is somewhere for them to rent affordably, sell their house, and it adds into the supply chain. So there's lots of circles that I keep coming back to of what's the fix for any of these things. I don't know that there's much fix, but if we all work together, then maybe we can find. I just saw in the Recorder and Times yesterday that the mayors in the area are looking to remove red tape to have secondary units in houses, which is a great thing. It gives more chance for there to be more supply for the bigger amount of people that we are having come into this area to look for houses. I guess we're opening up to question period. Is that what's next?
No, actually, the minister, Minister Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has got a few comments to share with you from the provincial government. Mr. Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. And given some of the questions in the chat, I'm going to try to just pare down some of my responses. I think Dana's last comment really hits the nail on the head, that we do have a great opportunity to have all three levels of government working together to put a plan in place to help the housing affordability issue. And I really appreciate the work that Tim's been able to do at OREA. I want to thank local realtors like Dana, who I've known for many, many years. They've done great work across the province. They've given us a number of wonderful suggestions. I appreciate Tim's kind words about our legislation and our plan, More Homes, More Choice. The fact of the matter is, we brought that in prior to the pandemic. We have seen some great success. Housing starts in 2020, despite the pandemic, were the highest in any year over the last decade. We've seen, as has been earlier mentioned, The changes we made in terms of purpose-built rentals in the fall economic statement in 2018 have resulted, and the numbers Tim talked about were actually CMHC numbers showing that we've had more purpose-built rental starts than we've seen in the last since 1992. So, but there is much more work that we can be done. There are measures that are part of the housing supply action plan that we really need our municipal partners to move forward on. And the example that Dana used was the secondary suites that was just in the local media yesterday. That was a measure that I put in our legislation in 2019. So it's been the law of the land that municipalities can take that forward. They can defer development charges to incent rental development. They can defer development charges on nonprofits. We've established a community benefits regime so that there's some predictability in the system and we can move forward. And we have seen great results. Last week I was in Kingston and made an announcement that the government is supporting a tiny homes development, our province's first veterans village, which is a partnership with the city of Kingston and the Homes for Heroes Foundation. And the CEO of Homes for Heroes mentioned on November 10th at the announcement that this facility, in terms of the speed of the approvals, is faster than any other jurisdiction that he's dealt with in Canada. So that made me feel good as minister. As part of that innovative tiny homes development, I did place a minister zoning order or MZO on it so that it would be viewed faster. But I just want to give you some quick stats in Eastern Ontario before we take questions. The housing sector province-wide grew by about $25 billion in 2020, $4.5 billion more than in 2019. And right here in Eastern Ontario, we had 12,500 starts in 2020, which was an incredible 20% increase since 2019. And you look at some of the other numbers, housing up 7%, rentals, 1,800, 13% increase, condo starts, 80% higher than 2019. So even with those record numbers, there's still much more that we need to do collectively as all three levels of government. And as Tim mentioned, in the fall economic statement, we are going to be doing a housing affordability task force. It is something that's a priority of the government, and we'll have more to say in the coming days. But I just want to thank OREA and Tim and Dana for being here today and for being able to put some of those comments on the record. I think we've got a number of questions, so we probably should get to them now.
So Minister Clark, actually, I think the first question is for Mr. Hudak in regards to the risk of illegal money laundering via real estate purchases. What signs should realtors and financial institutions look for to identify this kind of purchase and avoid facilitating it? Would that be one for you, Tim?
Sure, and Dana may have a point of view on it too, but thanks, Heather, for the question. There's obvious things in terms of like all cash purchases, right? Coming in large sums of money, that sort of thing. But usually they're not that dumb. So here's what really happens. It's not like Pablo Escobar's niece comes in and hires Dana, but Dana would work with her anyway, and buys a house under Mrs. Escobar, right? They hide behind numbered companies. So at some point in time, we made a decision to allow numbered companies, and you don't really know who is behind that. And at OREA, we're suggesting it's time to tear down that wall that criminals hide behind. So typically, Heather, there's not much the realtor can do because it's a numbered company that comes in, and you don't know who the owner is. The suggestion we make is what's called beneficial registry. And you list who the primary owners are of that company, and you make it fully searchable, not just for police, that's obviously important, but for the public as well. And you can start pinning who the owners are of real estate in Canada to the original crimes back in South America or corrupt government regimes. That's how you do it. So there are some obvious telltale signs, but most of that stuff, they hide behind numbered companies. There's a recent one in British Columbia by the way of Hell's Angels that use this mechanism to buy property. They seem normal, and then they found it was actually Hell's Angels was buying up real estate. Dana, anything you want to add?
More so in this area, I don't see much of it, honestly. But we have set up at our office that we don't take cash deposits whatsoever. It's just a no. The answer is no. I've had people come up to me with cash before and want to put a deposit on a house, and it's just the answer is no. So it eliminates a little bit of the worry there, because there is then tracking on where the money came from. If they send an EFT or anything like that for the deposit, at least that makes us feel a bit more comfortable that it's not just cash being handed to us. There's no line up from there then. That's my, I think it would be, I would probably have to deal more with it if I lived in a bigger city, but I don't. So we're cautious here, knowing that it could come in, but it hasn't happened too much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, perhaps one would be for Minister Clark. The question in essence is, the fee associated with rental is not keeping up with the problem of the cost of maintaining in regards to exponential, the cost of that. Landlords are challenged in the way of rent increases versus the cost of maintaining a rental property. Minister Clark, did you want to touch on that?
Sure. So, and that's a great question, and I appreciate Mr. Gumbo putting it in the chat. I also appreciate them reaching out to my office this week. This has been a real challenge during the pandemic. We've had to really say to landlords and tenants, we want you to work together to ensure that people can be housed. We certainly didn't want anyone, not being housed during the pandemic. That's why we did the eviction moratorium. That's why we were one of the only jurisdictions in Canada to put a rent freeze for 2021, where there was no increase. We started back with the formula that would provide, starting on January 1st, 2022, in rent control buildings, the 1.2%. There is a process, as landlords know, that they can apply to the Landlord Tenant Board for an above guideline increase for a variety of measures. We do understand the challenges that both landlords and tenants have had over the pandemic, but we made a commitment in 2018. As a government, we ran on a platform that we were going to protect rent control for existing tenants. We did lift rent control in the fall economic statement on new builds, and that's why we've had such a great success with new purpose-built rental construction. But we're going to be responding to your email and giving you the path forward if you wanted to explore your options as a landlord. But in terms of the Housing Affordability Task Force, we really need to build more supply, as the stats earlier have indicated. We need all types of housing. Doesn't matter whether it's single detached, whether it's purpose-built rental, townhouses, family-sized condos. There's every type in the market. We need to increase supply on. So, but I appreciate the question.
And we'll just do, I think this question is actually for Dana in regards to housing. You mentioned specific to Brockville, but is that the same for Kempville, Gananoque, some of the more rural? Dana?
So it's funny because it used to be 2 years ago, 5 years ago, if you had a little less money in your pocket, you would look at the more rural areas, Prescott, different areas like that. And now I find that the prices are all generally equal because you have such low supply in Brockville of houses that people need a house, so they look to the outer areas and then they pay the same amount there. And then you also have the people coming in from bigger cities, and they're used to driving for however long to get to work. So driving 20 minutes down the road to Prescott from Brockville is nothing to them. So the prices, again, they're all the same. Like you don't see any difference really in a Brockville price to a Prescott price to a Johnstown price even. So it's problems everywhere.
Super. Thanks, Dana. Well, great presentation, Dana, Tim, thank you. Steve, appreciate you being a part of this as well. And certainly, if there's additional questions, feel free to send them into our office and we'll make sure our presenters get them. Thank you. You will each be receiving My Local Markets Leeds-Grenville package for your presentation today. We appreciate being part of this hot topic that's so important to this region. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.